Hello, welcome back to my studio. So today we're going to talk a little bit about which mice work really well for people with large hands. So my hands are 21 centimeters long and they're 10.5 centimeters wide to the knuckle. And I find that a lot of mice in 2024, 2023 are tailored towards people with smaller hands, and I guess, small to medium hands are more common than people with large shovel hands. So I think it might be useful to go through my experience with some of these mice, which ones have worked particularly well for me, and then therefore hopefully help you find one that will work well for you. So I have lots of different options here. Some of them are quite try-hard in the way that they've been designed and developed. So they've been designed with optimal performance in mind, and others are more relaxed, maybe for more casual gamers, because they're heavier and they have more features. So we're going to start with probably my two of the three favorite here. So we've got the NP01 and the AX from Vaxee. These mice are not particularly long, but they are quite wide, which is quite nice. So at least they're the right size in terms of width for me, and they're asymmetrical in their shape. The NP01 is asymmetrical and the AX is ergonomic. So basically the main difference between these mice, because they're quite similar in their sort of overall shape profiles, if I just show you that now. Underneath you can see they kind of look very similar, and then if you look from the top they look very similar too. The main difference is that the AX is slanted, the NP01 is not, and then the hump on the AX is more towards the middle, and then the hump on the NP01 is more towards the back. So depending on how you want to grip your mice will depend on which one of these is better for you. I love these mice. I won't talk too much more about them because I've done a really detailed review on them, and you can see all of that on in the description down below. I'll link all of those videos if I've already reviewed them. So we'll move on from the NP01 and the AX. I think it's deceptive, though, that these are good for large hands because they are actually quite small. I think the reason that I like them is that the width works really well for my size hands, and I think width, which might be a bit of a hot take, is more important when you're looking for a mouse than length is, particularly when we come onto this little nugget at the end. Mouse doesn't fit nicely this way in your hand if you're looking to palm or claw it. No matter how long it is, it just won't work for you. Whereas if you can get good contact with your hand with a mouse that's sort of appropriately sized in the width dimension, then you can kind of make do with it if the length is a little bit shorter. And on the AX, as an example, you can see my finger there sitting on the end of that edge. I kind of just pull it into my palm from that position. So it works in my favor almost that this is a small mouse, because that finger on the end is quite useful to secure it in my grip. So we'll push those to the side. We won't talk about those ones anymore. We're going to talk now about the EC1-CW. And this is probably my second favorite mouse at the moment, just behind the NP01. So the EC1-CW is insane. I think a lot of people don't give it the respect that it deserves because it's 80-ish grams, 82 grams I think it is. But this is an ergonomic mouse. It's the most size appropriate mouse for me in my collection. So it fits my hand really nicely and it fills out all of the gaps in my hand. What I tend to do with this, again, it's got that ergonomic shelf across this right hand side, is I rest my fingers in that shelf, and because there's so much space there, there's no issue with me doing that with my hands sort of fully extended, and I rest my thumb right into that groove on the left hand side, and it just basically, my hand is supported everywhere. It's super comfortable, and I don't even think about the weight because for me, I guess it's not a problem. You'll need to consider if that is a problem for you. I typically would palm this mouse and I would hold it at a slight angle so it's not directly straight. It kind of goes at an angle for me because of the way that I like to hold it with my fingers in that finger shelf. I do also really like this mouse, deceptively, for fingertip grip, which is quite odd because ergonomic mice that are this size don't fit the kind of theme of fingertip grip mice, i.e. typically fingertip grip mice would be really thin, quite low and quite light. This is basically the complete opposite of all of that. But the reason I like it is because it puts all my fingers in quite a relaxed position because it's so big. But you can kind of adjust your grip by gripping further at the back. You get a wider sort of position on the mouse. And if you grip it more towards the front, like so, then you get sort of a more manageable width. And I find this to work really well in fingertip grip for me. It's not my favorite fingertip grip mouse, but I've got some high scores in Vaxee with this mouse and fingertip grip, which really surprised me. And then finally, in claw grip, if I don't aggressive claw many of my mice because I find that my fingers get uncomfortable in an aggressive claw grip. And this is about as aggressive as it gets on the EC1. So I find that the way that that shelf on this side comes out to meet my fingers is really comfortable, and I find it to be extremely useful in this grip to have that shelf on the right hand side. Also, the definition on this left hand side for the thumb groove is really nice. It just kind of, everywhere I want contact with the mouse, I just have it intuitively by the way the mouse is designed, and that is why I love this mouse. You know, I can hold it in many different ways, it performs brilliantly in every one of those ways. And the final thing I'll say about it is that it is the most size appropriate. I just want to emphasize that. Of all of these mice, the EC1 is the biggest that I have, and it fits my hand like a glove. So, you know, if you've got really large hands, maybe the EC1 is the way to go for you. And you can still buy these wired. They're still really affordable wired. So if you don't want to spend the £130 for a wireless version, just go ahead, get the wired one. I'm going to talk now about the Shroud G303 edition, and this is a mouse that this is the first basically full-size mouse that I mained. This was years ago now. This is my second model because I gifted the first one to a friend and then regretted it, so I bought another one second-hand for about £50. You can get them really cheap. They're quite an unusual shape. So what I find is this is like a diamond-shaped mouse. It's really cool. I really like it. And the reason it's good for large hands, in my opinion, is because it's quite versatile. So you don't have to grip it in a specific way, although that's kind of what it's designed for, is to be super locked in with that diamond shape. It just kind of slots into your palm and you have these really nice angles to just hold on to and grip. What I have found though is that because the back is so high, the hump on the back is so high, I can kind of just rest it in this thumb pocket or this thumb pad, and I can almost hold it there forward in my grip, and my hands still have a lot of areas to hold on to on the side of the mouse. So those angles are really useful. And you can see on this mouse in particular, I've used the Struth Clawmate mouse modification just to stop my fingers from slipping further back than I need them to. We'll talk more about these later. So this mouse is very underrated in my opinion. I can hold it in many different ways. I actually feel like it feels a bit like a spaceship. So it's really high, and compared to some of the other mice on this desk, it's quite flat at the top, which might sound like a bad design, and not a lot of people really give it the credit I feel that it's due. But this mouse is really nice. Some of the best clicks I've tried on the G303 Shroud edition. What I would say for this is, if you do pull it really far, really deep into your palm, it might feel like I said about the AX, it might feel like your fingers are right at the end of the mouse. That may or may not be a problem for you. Another thing to consider is how kind of tapered these sides are. The taper is really aggressive. Some of you will like that, some of you won't. And what I find when I'm holding this mouse, because of the shape of it, how unique it is, I find it really fun just to play around with different grips. It's not one that's super versatile. It's not one that you'll be palm gripping potentially. It's mostly a claw grip mouse, maybe a fingertip mouse at a push. And the main reason you won't be palming it, and this is an issue with this mouse design that I want to share before we move on, is this bit back here. It kind of has like a curve on the back. And if you put weight on the back and you don't put weight on the front, so if you just watch for the moment, you can see it lifts off the desk, because, you know, if you do that on any other mouse in this collection, that won't happen. But because it's got that overhang on the hump, if you put too much weight on the back, you'll just lift the front up. And that's genuinely something that I've fallen into when I've been playing with this mouse in my gaming sessions. So you have to be kind of conscious of that, not to put too much of the weight of your hand on it, because it will just lift the front of the mouse up. I really like this mouse. Hopefully I've done it justice. G303 Shroud Edition. It isn't my main anymore, but I used it for about a year before I started reviewing other products. So we'll put that one back. I've got the Lamzu Atlantis here. This is the OG. It's been polished, that's why it's shiny. And this is kind of representing the claw grip mice. And this is basically like an XM2 kind of shape as well, as far as I'm aware. And the reason why this mouse is good for people with large hands is because it has a really wide, nicely defined back hump. So this kind of supports all over the back of my palm. It's at a really nice angle. I can kind of palm it if I want to, which is unusual for a claw grip specialized mouse. You know, I can just like plant my hand on top of it, and sure, my fingers do kind of go over the ends, but they are comfortable. I don't feel like that's an uncomfortable position for my fingers to be in. Typically when I use this mouse, I relaxed claw. I do think that these, on this specific model, the hips at the back are a little bit too far back for me to aggressive claw it, but that doesn't mean that you won't be able to. Obviously I can do it, but it's just not comfortable for me. I typically would relaxed claw, and I'd run my finger on the end of the over the top of the button bumpers. I find that to be really comfortable. Clicks, etc., all really nice. Lamzu typically do a good job in that sense. It's quite light as well. So it's the lightest one so far on this list. It's actually the lightest one on the desk. I think it's about 55 grams if I remember right. Maybe I'm wrong. But it's really nice. It's a really good mouse. If you're into claw grip or a claw / palm kind of hybrid approach to your mice, then this might be also a really good one for you to consider. And then we come on to the two mice that I have here, which are less meta in the enthusiast space. So these mice are very good for people that don't necessarily want to be competitive gamers, I would say. You know, and by that I mean you can certainly play competitive FPS games with these, but you don't see too many G502s on the main stage at the Valorant Championships, you know, or the Apex Legends Championships. And the reason for that, I think, is because the shapes can be a little bit awkward. I'll get into that shortly. And all of the functionality on the buttons is just maybe a little bit unnecessary for every FPS game that you play. But that said, there's a reason I brought it here. I do think they're really fun. And if you're the kind of gamer that plays different games, so not just competitive FPS games, then these mice might be a really good option for you. Before we get into the really good things I like about this mouse, there's also there's a couple of things I don't like about it, and that surprised me about it. I almost returned the G502 when it arrived because I couldn't get over the feel of the clicks being so kind of echoey. It sounds like there's a spring in there that's kind of twanging every time I click them. It's really loud, and it's not a particularly nice clicking experience. What I would say is, if you're not that fussy with your clicks, you'll be fine with it. And the second thing that I'm not too in love with about this mouse is that I thought this would be great for people with big hands. The issue I have with it is that I quite like to palm grip things. I think this is a good mouse if you claw grip, if you've got large hands, because it's got a lot of surface area on the sides, and on the right hand side you've got these nice sort of rubber finger sort of grips. If you claw grip it, it's good. I think if you palm grip it though, this button encroaches on your thumb space, so I can't really stick my thumb in on the left hand side without it resting on top of that button, which means I press it when I palm grip it. So I would have to take that button off. So that's one of the features removed, just by virtue of the fact I've got large hands and I want to palm grip. Also, the other thing is this hump is deceptively small at the back. So it looks like quite a wide mouse, but the way that the hump comes back, it is not particularly palm filling. And I don't know if that's just because of the way that the hump is positioned, or if it's maybe just the way that I'm holding it. But I think this mouse looks a lot bigger at the back than it actually is because it's so wide in the middle. But the good thing about this mouse is if you do want to claw grip it, you have a lot of extra buttons at your disposal. And this functionality, I think, is so underrated and it's really fun to play with. So we've got 3 buttons on the side. So we've got our mouse 4, mouse 5, and then we've got this sort of I think this is commonly referred to as like a sniper button. And that's really fun if you can think of a application in the games that you're playing to have extra functionality there. You also get extra clicks on the side of the click. So these are 2 buttons here, and then you have your mouse 1 and 2, mouse 3 in the middle. So you get access to 2 more sort of hotkeys, if you like, on the top, which again could be game changing depending on which game you play. And then finally, the best feature of this mouse, which is probably old news to a lot of you, but the scroll wheel going to the side is a brilliant function. And this is something that I've made a lot of use of when I play characters in Apex Legends that have specific character actions that normally you'd keybind to your keyboard. But say if I was playing Rampart and you put down a piece of cover, and then I would push my scroll wheel to the right to pick it up. So that's the kind of action that I would assign to those functionalities on the scroll wheel. Okay, hopefully that was useful. I do think this mouse is good if you claw grip, as I say. If you're a palm gripper though, maybe don't use the G502. And then finally, we're coming on to probably the thing that I'll get laughed at the most for, and this is a Razer Naga Pro, I think. Yeah, a Razer Naga Pro. And there's lots of cool features about this mouse. I think this is a really nice option if you are sort of an MMO gamer that also wants to play FPS games. It is quite heavy, so this is the only mouse on this table that is over 100 grams in weight. I think it's almost 120 grams, and you can feel that. It doesn't feel too heavy to me, personally. I actually quite like the weight. I find that the extra weight actually helps with my stability when I aim, so there's something that's a positive from that. So it has similar features to the G502 on the scroll wheel. You can click the scroll wheel to the side, which is something that I really like. And the best thing about this mouse is the buttons. You can switch them out. So this is the kind of FPS setup for the buttons. You've just got 2 on the side, but you can take that off and you can add another one. And this one has 6 buttons on the side. So I don't actually use this one because the buttons feel a bit awkward to use, but you can see how if you could train yourself to use them, how that would be useful. You could have all your different healing items on different buttons, and if you can get used to the weight and the shape and the size of it, then that would also be not a bad thing to have on a mouse with the additional scroll wheel functionality. And then finally, the third one that you get is 12 buttons, and this is kind of the MMO feature or the MMO functionality that a lot of people buy this mouse for. You probably wouldn't want to use this side option if you're an FPS gamer, because you've got nowhere really to grip the mouse on the side other than resting your thumb on the buttons, and if you're swinging your hand around and you accidentally click one of those, you'd probably find yourself throwing more often than not. So typically when I game with this mouse, which isn't that often, but I wanted to mention it, I use the 2 side button option there. A reason why I like this mouse is because the right hand side of it is like super unique. It's really fun to just play around with different grip styles. I find that I can't really palm grip it because it's a little bit too stumpy. It's quite short, but it is really wide. And like I said earlier, it fits really nicely. I just press my thumb and my pinky and it just kind of hovers there in my grip. So it's really nice. I find it's actually quite an enjoyable mouse to sort of claw and fingertip hybrid, if you like, so I can just kind of throw it around within my grip because it's quite short. It feels really comfortable, quite ergonomic, and an underrated mouse, I think. I'll get flamed in the comment section for that one, of course. And then finally, we come on to the Struth Gaming Clawmate modification. This is a modification that I have done a detailed sort of how-to guide on. I'll link that in the description down below too. And the reason I've included this as an option in this large hand mouse kind of enthusiast diaries video is because if you already have a mouse and you don't want to buy a new one, you can improve the shape of it for the size of your hands with these Clawmate modifications. So as I have on the side of this mouse here, I've just put a little reference point on the side where my finger wants to rest, and it just helps me to relax my grip with this mouse, where otherwise I would have to hold onto it a lot tighter, and I would be a lot more conscious of my grip on this mouse if it wasn't for this. Clawmate. I've also used the Clawmate on other mice, quite little mice, that has made them infinitely more comfortable by having these Clawmates attached to those products. So if you don't want to buy a new mouse and you want to maybe spend, I don't know, £15, I think these are, if you get them shipped, something like that, then you can just invest, a smaller amount of money to improve the quality of your experience with the mice that you already have. All right, that was probably extremely waffly. Hopefully it was useful to some of you, and these are all my recommendations for large-handed gamers. I do have lots of mice, I have lots of other options, but these are the ones that are sort of most comfortable for my hand size if I want to claw and palm grip them. Of course, everyone's hand shapes are different, and I find that that's one of the reasons that doing mouse reviews is so difficult when you're talking about shapes and how they fit and how they feel. It's because my hands might be the exact same dimensions as someone else, but the way that their hands move, the density of the muscles in their hands might be different to mine, and so on. So I find it so difficult to recommend based on just the dimensions. But hopefully I've given you enough information to inform your next decision. All right, I am waffling at this point. I will chat to you soon, I expect. Peace.